The ballroom glittered with the cold, hard light of 1,000 crystals. But for one woman, it was about to become a stage for the most profound humiliation of her life. Aurora Reinhardt, wife of the city's most formidable billionaire, stood in a dress that was her one act of defiance. In moments that defiance would be drowned in crimson wine deliberately spilled by the man who had promised to cherish her. He wouldn't stop there. Before the eyes of the city's elite, he would take his mistress in his arms and dance, leaving his wife stained, shattered, and alone in the spotlight of his cruelty. The air in the penthouse apartment was as still and sterile as a museum, a space curated for display, not for living. Aurora Reinhardt traced the seam of the gown laid out on her bed. It was a deep sapphire silk, a whisper of a dress that clung and flowed in a way that felt like freedom. It was her choice, a small but significant rebellion in a life dictated by the whims of her husband, Grayson Reinhardt. For 5 years, she had been Mrs. Reinhardt, a title that was supposed to be an honor, but felt more like a job description. She had met Grayson at a university architectural showcase, where her final project, a bold, sustainable community library, had won top honors. He had been a guest speaker, a titan of industry, who had inherited the vast Reinhardt holdings from his father. He'd been utterly captivated, not by her design, but by her. He'd pursued her with a relentless, dazzling charm that had swept her off her feet. He had promised her the world a partnership, a life where her creativity would flourish alongside his business acumen. The reality was a slow, creeping erosion of self. Her dreams of designing revolutionary buildings were gently but firmly shelved. "There's no need for you to work, darling," he would say, his voice a silken trap. "Your job is to be the face of our home, the hostess of my events, the envy of every woman in this city." He had built her a gilded cage, beautiful from the outside but cold and empty within. Tonight was the annual Reinhardt Foundation Gala, the crown jewel of the city's social calendar. It was an event Grayson orchestrated with military precision, a night to project power, influence, and flawless success. And every year, Aurora was his most important accessory. The bedroom door clicked open. Grayson stood there, already immaculate in a custom-tailored tuxedo. His eyes, the color of slate, swept over the sapphire dress on the bed, and a frown line appeared between his perfectly groomed eyebrows. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of warmth. "It's my dress for tonight," Aurora replied, trying to keep her own voice steady. "I picked it out last week." "You picked it out, Aurora? We have a stylist for a reason. I approved the silver-sequined gown from Chanel. It's in the master closet." He gestured dismissively toward the other side of the vast suite. "I didn't like it, Grayson. It was harsh. This one feels more like me." He walked closer, picking up a fold of the silk between his thumb and forefinger, as if it were a distasteful object. "More like you. Who is that precisely the unknown student I found, or the wife of Grayson Reinhardt? The Chanel is an investment piece. It says power. This," he let the silk drop, "says trying." The word stung more than a shout would have. It was his preferred weapon, a quiet, condescending dismissal that made her feel small and foolish. "I want to wear this one," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but the words felt heavy with defiance. Grayson stared at her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Then a slow, cold smile spread across his lips. It was a smile that never reached his eyes, a smile that she had learned to fear. "Fine," he said, the word clipped. If you're so determined to make your own little statement, who am I to stop you? Just be ready in an hour. Punctuality is paramount." He turned and left without another word, the click of the door echoing in the silence. Aurora let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It was a victory, but a hollow one. She knew Grayson too well. He never simply conceded a point. He would find a way to make her pay for this small act of independence. An hour later, as she descended the sweeping marble staircase of their penthouse, she saw him waiting by the door. His eyes raked over her, from the simple diamond studs in her ears to the hem of the sapphire dress. He said nothing, merely offered his arm. His touch was audible, even through the fabric of his suit. The ride to the Gala was silent. Aurora watched the city lights blur past the window of the Rolls-Royce, a glittering tapestry of lives she could only imagine. She felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Grayson's silence was always more menacing than his anger. As they pulled up to the grand entrance of the museum, where the Gala was held, a flurry of flashes erupted from the assembled paparazzi. Grayson's public persona snapped into place. The charming smile appeared, the easy confidence radiated from him. He helped her from the car, his hand warm on her back now, a possessive, performative gesture for the cameras. "Smile, darling," he murmured, his breath close to her ear. "You're a Reinhardt. You have everything you could ever want." As they walked the long red carpet, Aurora put on the mask she had perfected over the years. She smiled until her cheeks ached, her posture perfect, her every move a study in graceful elegance. But beneath the surface she felt a tremor of fear. Tonight was different. The sapphire dress was a declaration, and she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that Grayson was preparing his response. The gilded cage was about to become an arena, and she was the one who would be thrown to the lions. The grand atrium of the Museum of Modern Art had been transformed into a celestial wonderland. Thousands of fairy lights were strung from the vaulted ceiling, mimicking a star-filled sky. Crystal-laden tables groaned under the weight of floral arrangements and gleaming silverware. The air hummed with the conversations of the city's most powerful people bankers, politicians, tech moguls, and socialites, all orbiting the gravitational center that was Grayson Reinhardt. Grayson moved through the crowd with the predatory grace of a shark, a charming smile fixed on his face while his eyes scanned for opportunities. Aurora was tethered to his side, a silent, beautiful satellite. He would introduce her with a casual, "You've met my wife, Aurora," his tone making it clear that her identity began and ended with him. She would smile, shake hands, and murmur pleasantries, feeling more like a ghost than a person. She noticed Bianca Sterling almost immediately. It was impossible not to. Bianca was a flame in a room of muted elegance poured into a crimson dress that left little to the imagination. She was the daughter of a rival real estate developer, a woman with ambition etched into her sharp, beautiful features. For months, whispers had followed Bianca and Grayson, but he had always dismissed them with a laugh, calling Aurora's suspicions unbecoming paranoia. But the way he looked at Bianca tonight was different. As Bianca glided toward them, her eyes locked on Grayson. A current passed between them that was so palpable, Aurora felt it like a static shock. "Grayson, darling," Bianca purred, completely ignoring Aurora. "The party is a triumph as always." "Bianca." Grayson's voice was warmer, more genuine than it had been with Aurora all evening. "You look incandescent." "I try." Bianca laughed, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. The gesture was a brand, a claim. Aurora stood frozen, invisible. The polite society around them pretended not to notice their gazes sliding away, but she could feel their furtive glances, their silent judgments. She was the sapphire-clad obstacle, the inconvenient wife in the presence of the woman her husband truly desired. Grayson finally turned to Aurora, his smile tightening. "Aurora, you remember Bianca?" "Of course," Aurora said, her voice cool. "It's hard to forget." Bianca's smile was a predatory flash of white teeth. "Likewise. That's a simple dress, Aurora." Very understated. The compliment was laced with poison. Simple. Understated. In this room, those words meant plain. Unimportant. Before Aurora could respond, Grayson steered the conversation away, launching into a discussion about a recent acquisition. He kept Bianca's hand on his arm, effectively creating a closed circle that excluded his own wife. Aurora took a step back, the humiliation a hot flush creeping up her neck. She needed to escape, if only for a moment. "Excuse me," she murmured, slipping away from the group. Neither of them seemed to notice her departure. She found a quiet alcove near the terrace, taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Her hand trembled slightly. She took a deep, calming breath, the cool night air a balm on her heated skin. She watched her husband from a distance. He was laughing with Bianca, his head bent close to hers, his entire body language screaming intimacy and affection. It was a public declaration of his affair, a spectacle designed to wound. After several long minutes, he seemed to remember her existence. His eyes found hers across the room, and he started walking toward her. Bianca remained behind a smug, triumphant look on her face. For a wild, foolish moment, Aurora felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he was coming to apologize. Maybe he'd seen the pain in her eyes. He stopped in front of her, his expression unreadable. He picked up a glass of red wine from a nearby table, a deep blood-red Merlot. "Having a nice time, darling?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. "It's a wonderful event, Grayson," she said, choosing the safe, neutral response. "Is it? I was worried you were feeling left out, especially in that dress." He swirled the wine in his glass, the dark liquid clinging to the sides. "You wanted to make a statement tonight, didn't you? To be seen as your own person." The malice in his voice was unmistakable now. The knot of dread in her stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone. "I just wanted to feel like myself," she whispered. "Yourself," he scoffed. He took a step closer, his body blocking her from the view of most of the room. "Let me tell you who you are. You are Mrs. Grayson Reinhardt. You exist because I allow you to. Your name, your status, your entire world. It's all a gift from me. And you are a deeply, deeply ungrateful recipient." His movement was sudden, a deliberate, jarring stumble. The entire glass of red wine tilted, and the dark, viscous liquid cascaded down the front of her sapphire dress. It was like a fatal wound, a blossoming crimson stain that spread across the delicate silk, destroying it completely. A collective gasp rippled through the guests nearest to them. "Oh my goodness!" Grayson exclaimed, his voice dripping with false concern. "How clumsy of me. I am so sorry, Aurora. You must have bumped into me." He was blaming her, in front of everyone. The lie was so blatant, so cruel, that it stole the air from her lungs. She looked down at the ruin of her dress, the wine soaking through to her skin, cold and sticky. Then she looked up at his face. There was no apology in his eyes, only a cold, triumphant glint. He had won. He had punished her for her defiance and reasserted his dominance. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket and began to dab uselessly at the massive stain, making it worse. "Here, let me help. This is a complete disaster. You're a mess." His words echoed in her head. "You're a mess." He finally stopped sighing dramatically. "Well, that's ruined. You should probably go home and get changed, darling. No need to make a scene." And then came the final devastating blow. He turned his back on her, leaving her standing there, stained and humiliated. He walked directly back to Bianca, who was watching with a wide, victorious smile. He took her hand, raised it to his lips for a theatrical kiss, and then led her onto the dance floor as the orchestra swelled into a romantic waltz. The room spun. All eyes were on Aurora. She saw the pity, the morbid curiosity, the whispered gossip behind elegant hands. Grayson didn't even glance back. He held Bianca close, laughing and whispering in her ear as they twirled under the starlit ceiling. The crimson of Bianca's dress, a perfect, cruel match to the stain on Aurora's. In that moment, something inside Aurora broke. The love she had once felt, the hope she had clung to it all, shattered, leaving behind only the sharp, cutting edges of betrayal. She was not just a wife to him. She was a prop to be used and discarded. He hadn't just spilled wine on her dress. He had tried to spill it on her soul, to stain her very being with shame. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she straightened her spine. She held her head high, ignored the sea of staring faces and walked. She didn't run. She walked with deliberate, measured steps through the heart of the ballroom, past her dancing husband and his mistress, and out into the cold, unforgiving night, leaving the gilded cage behind, for good. The cold night air was a shock after the overheated ballroom. Aurora walked without a destination, her mind a maelstrom of shock and white-hot fury. The city lights blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. She ignored the doorman's concerned call, walking past the line of limousines and town cars, her ruined dress a flag of her public disgrace. She didn't know how long she walked, but eventually the sounds of the city's pulse brought her back to herself. She found herself standing in front of the St. Regis, a bastion of old-world elegance and quiet discretion. On impulse, she pushed through the heavy brass doors and entered the lobby. She bypassed the check-in desk and slipped into the hotel's legendary King Cole bar. The bar was an oasis of calm. Dark wood, soft lighting, and the low murmur of civilized conversation. She found a small, secluded booth in the corner and slid into the leather seat, finally allowing herself to become small to wrap her arms around herself. The massive wine stain on her dress felt like a brand. A waiter approached, his expression professionally, neutral though his eyes flickered to the stain. "May I get you something, madam?" "A cognac," she said, her voice hoarse. "Please." When the drink arrived, she held the heavy snifter in her hands, letting the warmth seep into her cold fingers. She didn't drink, just stared into the amber liquid, replaying the scene at the Gala over and over. Grayson's cold smile, the deliberate stumble, the triumphant look in Bianca's eyes, the pitying stares of the guests. A brutish act for a brutish man. The voice was deep and resonant, startling her. She looked up to see an elderly gentleman standing by her table. He was impeccably dressed in a tweed jacket, his hair a shock of silver, his face lined with the kind of wisdom and authority that is earned, not inherited. He held a glass of what looked like whiskey. "I beg your pardon," Aurora said, her defenses immediately rising. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the seat opposite her. She gave a hesitant nod, too stunned to refuse. He settled into the booth with a quiet grace. I was at the Gala. I saw what Mr. Reinhardt did. There was nothing accidental about it. Aurora stared at him. I don't know what you're talking about. The man smiled gently, a kind, knowing expression. My dear, there is no need for pretense here. You are among the walking wounded. I know the look well. My name is Desmond Galloway. The name registered with a jolt. Desmond Galloway was a legend, a recluse. He was a self-made billionaire who had built a global tech empire from nothing before selling it and disappearing from public life decades ago. He was rumored to be a fierce rival of Grayson's father, a man who operated on a completely different ethical plane. You're the Desmond Galloway, the very one, he said with a wry chuckle. Older and far less interesting than the papers used to make me out to be. I make a rare exception for the Reinhardt Gala every year. It's a fascinating anthropological study in avarice and ego. He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes sharp and intelligent, studying her. I saw you earlier tonight, Mrs. Reinhardt. When you arrived, there was a fire in your eyes, a flicker of defiance. That sapphire dress was no accident either, was it? Aurora was taken aback by his perception. No, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't. I thought not. He nodded. Grayson is his father's son. He sees people not as souls, but as assets on a balance sheet. You, I suspect, were his most prized acquisition. But acquisitions can be divested, especially when they begin to think for themselves. His words cut straight to the heart of the matter, articulating the truth she had been too afraid to admit to herself for years. The tears she had held back finally welled in her eyes. He did it to break me. She said the words choked with pain. To show everyone that I belong to him, that he can damage me and discard me whenever he pleases. And did he succeed? Desmond asked, his gaze steady and intense. The question hung in the air between them. Did he succeed? She felt broken, humiliated, shattered. But as she looked at this stranger, who saw her not as a victim, but as a person, a flicker of the fire he'd mentioned earlier rekindled. It was the same fire that had driven her to design that award-winning library, the same fire that had chosen the sapphire dress. No, she said the word, gaining strength as she spoke it. No, he humiliated me. He hurt me. But he did not break me. A slow, genuine smile spread across Desmond Galloway's face. Good. That is what I had hoped to hear. Because shame, Mrs. Reinhardt, is a useless emotion. But anger can be a magnificent fuel. It can build empires. Or in the right hands, it can tear them down. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. I've been watching Reinhardt Holdings for a long time. Grayson is arrogant and sloppy. He believes he is untouchable. People like that always leave themselves exposed. He paused, letting his words sink in. You have an architect's mind, do you not? You see the world in terms of structure design and integrity. You know that even the most imposing skyscraper can be brought down if you compromise its foundation. Aurora's heart began to beat faster. This was no ordinary conversation. This was something else entirely. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting, Desmond said, his eyes twinkling with a dangerous light, that you have a unique opportunity. You have an insider's knowledge of the man, and you have a reason to want justice. I have resources and a deep-seated dislike for everything the Reinhardt name represents. It strikes me that we might have a common interest. He placed a simple, elegant business card on the table. It contained only his name and a private phone number. "Go home, Mrs. Reinhardt. Not to his penthouse, but to a place of your own choosing. Take a day. Let the anger settle into resolve. And when you are ready to stop being a victim and start designing your own future and perhaps his downfall, you call me. I have a project in mind that might just interest an architect of your caliber." He stood up, gave her a small, respectful bow, and left the bar as quietly as he had entered. Aurora sat there for a long time. The cognac untouched her gaze, fixed on the small white card. The air in the bar no longer felt oppressive. It felt charged with possibility. The crimson stain on her dress no longer felt like a mark of shame. It was a declaration of war. Desmond Galloway had offered her a lifeline, but it was more than that. He had offered her a blueprint for revenge. The next morning, Aurora woke up on the crisp linen sheets of a suite at the St. Regis, booked under her maiden name, Aurora Cole. The first light of dawn streamed through the window, illuminating the sapphire dress, now dry and stiff, draped over a chair. It was an ugly, painful reminder, but she didn't hide it away. She looked at it as a soldier might look at their battle scars, a testament to what she had survived. The first call she made was not to Desmond Galloway, but to Nina Vance, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Nina's reputation was legendary. She was known for dismantling the empires of powerful men who mistreated their wives. "Nina, it's Aurora Reinhardt," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I need to hire you. I'm leaving my husband." There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a low whistle. "Well, well. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years, Aurora. What was the final straw?" "He redecorated my dress with a bottle of Merlot in front of 500 people." Aurora said, a touch of dark humor in her tone. "Public humiliation," classy Nina replied dryly. "That's not just grounds for divorce. That's a declaration of war. I'm in. My office, 11 a.m. The meeting with Nina was a bracing plunge into a cold, strategic reality. Grayson's attempts to control her began immediately. By the time she left Nina's office, she had received a dozen texts from him, escalating from feigned concern. "Are you all right?" I was worried sick to outright threats. "You cannot walk away from this, Aurora. Don't be a fool." A notification from her bank informed her that their joint accounts had been frozen. He thought he could starve her out, control her with money as he always had. He had underestimated her. He had forgotten she had allies. Her second call was to the number on Desmond Galloway's card. He answered on the first ring. "Mr. Galloway, it's Aurora. I was hoping you'd call, Aurora." His voice was warm and encouraging. "I trust you slept on it." "I did," she confirmed. "And I've hired Nina Vance. My assets are already frozen." Predictable Desmond chuckled. "A bully's first move is always to the wallet. Don't worry about that. I'm transferring a starting fund to an account under your name. Consider it a retainer for your services. Now about that project I mentioned. Are you free to meet this afternoon?" They met in a discreet private club, the kind of place so exclusive it didn't even have a sign. In a leather-bound room that smelled of old books and ambition, Desmond laid out his proposal. Every year, he began the city hosts the prestigious International Architectural Guild Awards. The most coveted prize is the Building of the Year Award. For the last decade, a project funded or designed by Reinhardt Holdings has won. It's a point of extreme pride for Grayson. It validates his belief that he is a visionary, a builder, not just a man who inherited a fortune. Aurora nodded. She knew the awards well. She used to attend them with Grayson, watching him accept accolades for soulless glass and steel monstrosities. This year, Desmond continued leaning forward. I want to sponsor a competing project. A project with soul. A project with a purpose. And I want you to be the lead architect. He unrolled a set of blueprints on the table. They were for a large, dilapidated warehouse in a neglected part of the city. This is the old waterfront textile mill. I own it. I want to transform it into a state-of-the-art community arts center. The Phoenix Center, I thought we could call it. A place for underprivileged artists, musicians, painters, sculptors to have studios, performance spaces, and galleries. A place of creation and rebirth funded entirely by my foundation. Aurora's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a building. It was a dream. It was the kind of project she had fantasized about before her own ambitions had been suffocated. It was meaningful, beautiful, and deeply human. "You want me to design this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't want you to design it, Aurora. I need you to," Desmond said, his gaze intense. "This project needs a visionary. It needs someone with passion, someone who understands what it means to be silenced and to fight for a voice. This is your chance to create your masterpiece right in Grayson Reinhardt's backyard. We will build a monument to creativity and resilience, and we will enter it for the Building of the Year award. We will challenge him on his own turf." The brilliance of the plan was staggering. It wasn't just about personal revenge. It was about professional annihilation. To beat Grayson at the one thing he believed he was good at, to steal the prize he saw as his birthright, would be a blow far more devastating than any divorce settlement. "He will fight it," Aurora said, already thinking through the logistics. "He has half the city council in his pocket. Zoning permits construction licenses." "Leave the politics and the financing to me," Desmond said with a wave of his hand. "I've been out of the game for a while, but I still know how to pull the strings. Your only job is to design the most extraordinary building this city has ever seen. Take all the pain, all the anger, all the years of suppressed talent, and pour it into brick and steel and light." A fire ignited in her chest, burning away the last vestiges of fear and doubt. This was her chance. Not just to get back at Grayson, but to get back to herself, to become the woman she was supposed to be before he had tried to erase her. "When do I start?" she asked, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. Desmond Galloway beamed. "You already have, my dear. You already have." As she left the club, the city skyline seemed different. It was no longer a symbol of Grayson's power, but a canvas waiting for her touch. The divorce proceedings would be brutal, the media frenzy intense. Grayson and Bianca would flaunt their relationship, trying to provoke her. But none of it mattered anymore. She wasn't the broken woman in the stained dress. She was Aurora Cole, architect, and she was about to draw the blueprints for Grayson Reinhardt's ruin. The following months were a blur of frenetic energy and focused creation. Aurora moved into a chic, minimalist loft in a different part of the city, a space that was entirely her own. It quickly transformed into a studio with sketches, blueprints, and material samples covering every available surface. She lived and breathed the Phoenix Center, often working late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to create something magnificent. She assembled a small, brilliant team of young, hungry designers and engineers who were inspired by her vision and by the project's mission. They saw her not as a spurned socialite, but as a leader, an artist of immense talent finally unleashed. For the first time in years, Aurora felt respected. Her ideas valued her intellect, celebrated. The woman who had been silenced for so long was now in command, her voice clear and decisive as she directed the project's every detail. The legal battle with Grayson was, as predicted, a vicious and public affair. His lawyers tried to paint her as an unstable, vindictive woman, while the tabloid media, fueled by strategic leaks from Grayson's camp, ran lurid headlines. Bianca was frequently photographed with Grayson dripping in jewels he had bought her, the pair looking smug and unassailable. Aurora, on Nina Vance's advice, remained completely silent. She refused to engage in the mudslinging. Her response would not be in the newspapers. It would be in the rising structure of the Phoenix Center. Grayson, through his sources, quickly learned about her project. At first, he was dismissive. "She's building some charity case downtown." He sneered at Bianca one evening over dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. "A little vanity project funded by that old fossil Galloway. It's pathetic. She thinks she can compete with the Reinhardt Tower expansion." The Reinhardt Tower expansion was Grayson's entry for the Architectural Awards, a cold, imposing glass skyscraper designed to dominate the skyline and project his corporate power. Bianca, sipping champagne, was less confident. "Don't underestimate her, Grayson. Desperate people are dangerous." "She's not dangerous. She's delusional." He shot back, his arrogance blinding him. "She couldn't even pick out her own dress for a party." "You think she can build a legacy?" But as construction on the Phoenix Center progressed, with astonishing speed, whispers began to circulate in the architectural community. Aurora's design was revolutionary. She wasn't just renovating the old textile mill. She was weaving the building's industrial history into a stunningly modern and organic design. She used reclaimed brick and timber from the original structure, combining it with vast expanses of glass and a soaring atrium filled with natural light. The building was designed to be not just beautiful, but sustainable and deeply connected to the community it served. It was a structure with a soul. Meanwhile, cracks were beginning to appear in Grayson and Bianca's perfect facade. Bianca's demands grew more extravagant. She wanted a bigger ring, a more prominent role in the Reinhardt Foundation, a public commitment he was still hesitant to give while the divorce was pending. His legal fees were astronomical, and the constant media scrutiny was beginning to wear on him. He became more irritable, more controlling. One evening, Bianca brought up the Phoenix Center again. "I saw a rendering of it in Architectural Digest online," she said, scrolling through her phone. "They're calling it the most anticipated project of the year. People are talking about her Grayson. They're calling her a genius." Grayson snatched the phone from her hand. He stared at the image of the building, a structure that was all light, warmth, and innovation. It was everything his cold corporate tower was not. A vein throbbed in his temple. "It's a fluke," he snarled, throwing the phone back at her. "Galloway's money can buy good press, but it can't buy taste. It's a glorified homeless shelter." "It's the front-runner for the Guild Award, according to the article." Bianca pressed her voice sharp. "What if she wins?" "She will not win," he roared, slamming his fist on the table, rattling the fine china. "I am Grayson Reinhardt. I do not lose, especially not to her." The outburst silenced Bianca, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Grayson began to see the Phoenix Center not as a pathetic hobby, but as a genuine threat. He started using his influence to cause problems. Sudden, unexpected inspections at the construction site, delays with material shipments from suppliers with ties to Reinhardt Holdings. But for every obstacle Grayson created, Desmond Galloway was there to clear the path. A failed inspection was overturned by a call to a higher-up. A delayed shipment was replaced by an expedited one from a European supplier Desmond had on retainer. The battle was fought not in the courts or the tabloids, but in the shadows of logistics and influence. Aurora remained above the fray, her focus unwavering. As the final panes of glass were installed and the interior spaces took shape, she walked through the atrium of the Phoenix Center. Sunlight streamed through the skylights, illuminating the warm brick and polished wood. She could already hear the echo of music, imagine the vibrant art that would soon hang on the walls. She had poured all of her pain, her anger, and her hope into this place. It was more than a building. It was her resurrection. She had taken the ugliest moment of her life and transformed it into something beautiful and enduring. Grayson had tried to ruin her with a stain, but she had built a landmark. The Gala was a distant memory, a nightmare from another life. The woman who had fled in shame was gone. In her place stood the architect of the Phoenix, ready to watch it rise from the ashes. The night of the International Architectural Guild Awards was exactly 1 year to the day since the gala. The venue was the same, the Museum of Modern Art, but for Aurora Cole, the world had been remade. She arrived not on the arm of a powerful man, but on her own, a woman of substance and acknowledged talent. She stepped out of the town car, not into a barrage of pitying whispers, but into a respectful hush, followed by the excited clicks of cameras. The tabloids had been replaced by reporters from esteemed architectural journals and cultural magazines. Her name, Aurora Cole, was on everyone's lips. Her dress tonight was not a weapon of defiance, but a statement of self. It was a gown of burnished gold, structured and elegant, echoing the lines of her own celebrated design. It radiated confidence, not vulnerability. As she walked the red carpet, she saw Grayson and Bianca arriving behind her. Grayson's face was a thunderous mask of fury. Bianca, clinging to his arm, looked pale and anxious, her crimson dress from the year before, now looking garish and desperate. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The room was buzzing with talk of the two main contenders for the Building of the Year award, the colossal corporate Reinhardt Tower and the soulful, innovative Phoenix Center. Aurora was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and admirers, fellow architects, critics and artists, who would soon call her building home. She found Desmond Galloway near the podium, looking at her with immense pride. "You have them running scared, my dear," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I haven't seen a Reinhardt look that apoplectic since his father lost a bidding war to me in '98. "This isn't over yet," Desmond Aurora cautioned, though. A smile touched her lips. "Oh, but it is," he replied softly. "Winning the award is just the flourish at the end. You've already won. Look around. You have their respect. You have your name back. And you have created something that will last." The presentations began. Grayson went first. He strode to the stage with his usual arrogance, delivering a slick, polished speech about maximizing vertical real estate and shareholder value. The renderings of the Reinhardt Tower were impressive in their scale, but they were cold, generic, and devoid of humanity. It was a monument to money. Then it was Aurora's turn. A quiet fell over the room as she walked to the podium. She didn't use flashy graphics or corporate jargon. She simply spoke from the heart. A building is more than just a structure. She began, her voice calm and clear, resonating through the large atrium. It is a container for human experience. It is a shelter for our dreams, a stage for our lives, a repository for our memories. It should not dominate a community. It should serve it. It should not intimidate. It should inspire. She spoke about the history of the old textile mill, about the lives of the workers who had once filled its halls. She talked about her vision of transforming a place of forgotten labor into a place of vibrant creation. Behind her images of the Phoenix Center filled the giant screen. Not sterile renderings, but photographs of the finished space filled with light and life. She showed the sun-drenched painter's lofts, the state-of-the-art recording studio, the intimate performance hall with its perfect acoustics, and the grand, welcoming atrium. We called it the Phoenix Center, she continued, because it represents the idea that beauty can rise from neglect. That purpose can be found in what was once discarded. That a strong foundation is not about how high you can build, but about how deeply you connect to the ground you stand on. She didn't mention Grayson. She didn't have to. Every word was an indictment of his philosophy, his soulless ambition. Her final slide was a simple, powerful photograph of the building at dusk, its windows glowing with warm light, a beacon of hope in its revitalized neighborhood. The greatest honor of my career, she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the captivated audience, has been to create a space not for profit or for ego, but for people. A place with a soul. Thank you. The room erupted. It wasn't just polite applause. It was a thunderous standing ovation. It was a roar of approval for her work, for her vision for her. Aurora looked out across the sea of faces and saw him. Grayson was still seated, his face pale with shock and rage, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists on the table. Bianca sat beside him, looking utterly defeated. In that moment, Aurora knew that Desmond was right. The award didn't matter. She had taken the stage that had been the scene of her greatest humiliation and had commanded it. She had silenced the whispers and replaced them with thunderous applause. She had faced the man who had tried to break her, and had shown him and the entire world what she was capable of building. The unveiling was complete, not just of a building, but of her true self. Whatever came next was merely a formality. The hour that followed Aurora's presentation felt both fleeting and eternal. The air in the grand atrium was thick with anticipation as the judges deliberated. The initial buzz of conversation had quieted to a low, tense hum. Aurora sat at a table with Desmond and her design team, accepting their quiet words of encouragement, but feeling strangely serene. Across the room, Grayson's table was an island of hostile silence. He drank whiskey after whiskey, his glare fixed on the stage, while Bianca nervously shredded a cocktail napkin into a pile of confetti. Finally, the president of the Architectural Guild, an esteemed elderly woman named Helen Dubois, walked to the podium. Every year, this award recognizes a project that not only excels in design and innovation, but also contributes profoundly to the fabric of our city. She began, her voice echoing through the silent hall. This year, the choice was both incredibly difficult and in the end remarkably clear. We had two titans of architecture in contention, one representing the power of the corporate skyline, the other the heart of the community. Grayson sat up straighter, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. He had won for 10 years straight. He couldn't conceive of a world where that would change. While the technical achievement of the Reinhardt Tower expansion is undeniable, Helen continued, true architecture must be measured by its impact on human lives. It is for its breathtaking beauty, its innovative use of historic space, and its profound commitment to the soul of our city that the judges have made a unanimous decision." She paused, opening the golden envelope. The entire room held its breath. "The Building of the Year award goes to the Phoenix Center, designed by Aurora Cole." For a moment, there was absolute silence, followed by an explosion of applause that shook the very foundations of the museum. Aurora's team erupted in joyous shouts, hugging her and each other. Desmond gripped her shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. Aurora felt a wave of emotion so powerful it almost buckled her knees. Gratitude, vindication, and a deep, resounding joy. She made her way to the stage in a daze, the heavy, beautiful award feeling surreal in her hands. She gave a short, heartfelt speech, thanking Desmond, her team, and the community that had embraced the project. As she spoke, her eyes found Grayson. He looked as though he had been struck by lightning. The blood had drained from his face, leaving it a ghastly white. He was staring at her, his expression a toxic cocktail of disbelief, hatred, and utter defeat. As Aurora returned to her table, a hero's welcome awaiting her, a commotion started near the entrance of the ballroom. A small group of people in dark conservative suits had entered, led by a man with a grim, determined expression. They were not guests. They moved with an unnerving purpose, making a direct line for Grayson Reinhardt's table. Two of them flanked Grayson, speaking to him in low, urgent tones. One of them slid a document across the table in front of him. A journalist near the scene, sensing a major story, raised his phone to start recording. Grayson Reinhardt, the lead agent, said, his voice loud enough to carry in the sudden quiet. "I'm Agent Miller with the SEC. We have a warrant for your arrest on multiple counts of securities fraud and embezzlement." A collective gasp went through the room. Grayson shot to his feet, his face contorted in a mask of fury. "This is ridiculous. It's a mistake. You have no idea who I am." "Oh, we have a very clear idea, Mr. Reinhardt," Agent Miller said calmly. "We've been investigating your company's finances for the past 6 months, thanks to a very detailed and credible tip from a source who has been aware of your father's creative accounting for years. It seems you carried on the family tradition." Grayson's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on Desmond Galloway, who gave him a small, polite nod. The realization dawned on Grayson's face. This was no coincidence. The project, the award, the arrest, it was all a coordinated attack. Bianca, seeing her entire future dissolving before her eyes, made her choice. She stood up, snatched her purse, and took a deliberate step away from Grayson. "I have nothing to do with this," she announced to the room at large, her voice shrill with panic. "I had no idea. I am as much a victim as anyone." She turned and all but ran from the ballroom, abandoning him without a second glance. The final betrayal seemed to shatter what little composure Grayson had left. "You," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Aurora. "This is you. You did this." Before he could lunge toward her, the agents had his arms pinned behind his back, clicking handcuffs into place. The sound was sharp and final in the stunned silence of the room. As they led him away, a disgraced, sputtering shell of the powerful man he had once been. His eyes met Aurora's one last time. In them, she saw no remorse, no understanding, only the impotent rage of a king whose castle had crumbled to dust around him. Aurora felt nothing. No hatred, no pity, not even satisfaction. He was simply irrelevant. A ghost from a past she had already left behind. She turned her back on the pathetic scene of his downfall and looked at the award in her hand. This was her victory. Not his destruction, but her creation. She hadn't torn down his empire out of spite. She had simply built a better one, founded on integrity, passion, and light. The karma that had found Grayson Reinhardt was a consequence of his own actions, a bill that had finally come due. Her future was not about him. It was about the next building, the next project, the next dream. It was a future she would design herself. Aurora Reinhardt's story is a powerful testament to the fact that our greatest creations can be born from our deepest wounds. When faced with public humiliation and betrayal, she didn't crumble. Instead, she channeled her pain into purpose, rediscovering the strength and talent that her cruel husband had tried so desperately to extinguish. She proved that true power isn't about inherited wealth or a famous name. It's about integrity, resilience, and the courage to build a new foundation, even from the ashes of a life burned to the ground. Grayson and Bianca faced the swift and brutal consequences of their actions, a public downfall that mirrored the private pain they had inflicted. Aurora, on the other hand, found her ultimate revenge not in destruction, but in creation, building a legacy that would outshine theirs forever. What did you think of Aurora's journey? Let us know in the comments below. And if you were inspired by her story of strength and vindication, please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories.